Hello and welcome. You're watching the News Unlocked, the show that takes you behind the headlines to the real stories that matter. If it was Hyderabad which was underwater just 48 hours ago, today it is Pune, another city which finds itself being soaked. That's right, heavy rains have lashed Telangana and parts of Maharashtra. It means that some of India's smart cities or so-called smart cities are crumbling under the flooded waters. It could be Gurgaon, it could be Hyderabad, it could be Pune. Why is it that our cities are finding it more and more difficult with every passing year to deal with the unprecedented rainfalls? Why does this happen year after year? That's what we're going to look at. Why, despite crores being spent to develop the infrastructure of the so-called smart cities, do these cities crumble so easily? Before that, and before we discuss that with our special guests, let's take a look at this report filed by our correspondents Pankaj Khelkar in Pune and Ashish Pandey in Hyderabad.
Ravaging floods wreaking havoc in cities one after the other, leading to infrastructure collapse, severely affecting transportation, throwing life out of gear. These are just some of the terrifying visuals from Pune over the last 2 days as torrential rains lashed the city. Koregaon Park, one of the posh areas of the city, was hit badly.
Here you can see, just next to a 5-star hotel, the road in this Mangal Das road area, you can see waterlogging and people are walking through this waist-deep water.
Too much. And the way it was thunderstorm last night, it was havoc.
This is really bad.
The Pune-Solapur highway was closed because of the flooding, following the release of 1.7 lakh cusecs of water into the Bhima River through Ujjani Dam. But this isn't the first time that it has happened. Flooding in Pune has now become a yearly occurrence. In 2019, when rains left Pune inundated, this is what the authorities had to say.
We have around 30 flood sensors installed all across the city. And these sensors are installed on different bridges and in the low-lying areas. Now these sensors, they measure the water level at every point of time, whether in the monsoon or in the off-monsoon period. Now we have got a good amount of data from the flood sensors which are already there, right? Now we will be working on analyzing this data.
In the latest Smart City rankings announced in August 2020, issued by the Smart City Mission under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Pune has fallen from its second rank, achieved in 2019, to now a lowly 28th.
They may claim that they have put sensors to understand which are the flooding areas. They may have had some prototypes due to a centralized computerized system. However, on ground, it is not showing. Otherwise, the flooding that happened twice or thrice this season, they should have been alert and done something about it, but they cannot because everything is haphazard.
On Tuesday, it was Hyderabad that woke up to a deluge caused by record rainfall in the city. The torrential downpour caused unprecedented damage, the likes of which hasn't been witnessed in Hyderabad in years. The road leading to the international airport was washed away and 3 people were washed out due to flash floods in the area. The death toll is still rising. As of Thursday evening, 19 lives lost was the count.
This is not the first time, but second time in 2 months span, city witnessed inundation and flooding in several low-lying areas. And now, big question being asked that whether the government will learn any lesson after witnessing this kind of devastation.
Joining me now are Anant Maringanti. He's a geographer, urbanist and director, Hyderabad Urban Lab. He joined me from Hyderabad. P.K. Das is architect and urban planner. He joins me from Mumbai. And Mahesh Zagde is former principal secretary to the government of Maharashtra and former commissioner of the Pune Metropolitan Region Development Authority. Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm going to ask you for initial comments as to why you think we've seen the kind of scenes in Pune and Hyderabad. Is it just the quantum of rain? Anand Maringanti, why don't you take that? The highest rainfall that Hyderabad has had in 129 years. Is it just the sheer volume of rainfall that has caused this devastation?
No, the devastation has not been caused by the volume of the precipitation, Rajdeep. I think the thing to remember is that when we talk about the devastation, we need to think about who among the population is affected in what ways, right? There's a huge amount of differentiation. I mean, everybody has lost their cars and so on and so forth. But when you have 10 kids who have lost their school certificates after 6 months of being out of schools and their parents don't have money to pay, I think the trouble is very, very different. The impact is going to be different on different groups of people. What I think we are missing in many of these technology-based solutions or these approaches is that, number one, we are living with legacy infrastructures and legacy approaches to many of these problems. And number two, we haven't quite figured out how to connect our new technologies to old problems. So when we say that we have sensors that are going to tell us in advance when the water is going to rise in the city, we're completely forgetting the fact that it is going to tell me 10 minutes before it finally reaches and inundates everything. That's how the urban flood works in the city. Very, very different from water flowing down a river, reaching a flood point 8 hours down the line after the precipitation in the catchment.
And very quickly, are you saying, when you say that the infrastructure is largely legacy issue, are you saying that because Hyderabad was a much smaller city, let's say 25, 30 years ago, and suddenly has exploded, the infrastructure simply cannot cope up with this untrammeled construction, much of it on agrarian land, much of it over water bodies?
I think I'm actually saying a little bit more than that. One, I think that it's actually unfair to expect infrastructure that was built for, a small population 100 years ago to hold up to what we need now. But it's also true that the city has actually expanded way beyond what the original infrastructure was meant for. It's not just the population and density. You're now looking at 2,000 square kilometers of an area in which the urban agglomeration exists, which was not what Hyderabad city originally was 100 years ago. The second thing, and what you're saying is absolutely right, that the legacy actually is also that you have an agrarian technology which created these infrastructures in the city, which was then converted for some urban existence, which is basically that you have literally hundreds of tanks which are interconnected through nalas, and these nalas have all now been converted into sewage and stormwater drains. And that's where the problem really is. That we're using infrastructure and landscapes that were designed and developed for some other world into this current world, which doesn't understand what they were originally designed for.
Let me take that to Mahesh Zagde also, because Mr. Zagde, you've been a former commissioner of Pune Metropolitan Region Development Authority, and Pune too has changed from a so-called pensioners' paradise of sort to the kind of city it's become, where you've got constant construction going on, and therefore much of the infrastructure of the last 20 years has come up on land which was not designed for this kind of construction. Is that part of Pune's problem as well?
See, Rajdeep, it is not just the Pune's problem, but the problem is across the country. And since the country is witnessing unprecedented urbanization, and the story that urbanization is going to happen only in China and India for the next 30, 40 years. And therefore, we have to be very careful. It is not just the land and the turbo urbanization that we call. It is the function of how we plan the cities and how we execute these plans and how we perceive the disasters and so-called natural disasters. Now, this deluge happening is a natural disaster, and it's very easy to blame on the natural disasters now, heavy rains and all that. But
no, but look at Pune's population. You know, look at how Pune's population has exploded. I mean, clearly the present infrastructure is incapable of taking this, this large population explosion in the heart of the city.
I won't blame the Pune's population, since I had held the post of Pune Municipal Corporation as well as the Pune Metropolitan Region Development Authority. I won't blame it. See, we cannot stop any city from growing, and this has not happened anywhere in the world. And if you see many research papers on this, it's very difficult to stop any stuff. But then you can definitely reorient the development, and you can build in the system the kind of infrastructure that is needed. And that's where there is a monumental failure on the part of administrators, right from the secretaries of the urban development departments to the commissioners, that everyone knew that what is the rate of growth of urbanization in particular city, and accordingly they should have built up the infrastructure. They miserably failed. The plans are faulty.
Okay.
The development plans are faulty. The execution is even faultier than the plan. And then this is the mess that is going to be created. And with the climatological changes that are coming in, the disasters are going to be more.
I'll come to you again in a moment, because I just want to get first preliminary remarks from each of you. PK Das, as an urban planner, you know, Mumbai is obviously seen as the city in a way which perhaps represents this sort of flawed urbanization model. Do you believe that, you know, that the manner in which the city has exploded has meant that the water bodies of the city now are, you know, all constructed?
Well, yes. I think one of the first points, Rajdeep, I want to make is our governments have abdicated the responsibility to plan our cities and plan integrated planning. Now, this is very important. We take the example of flooding. Flooding is not an isolated phenomenon. It is intrinsically intertwined with all other natural phenomena. And to carry out development in planned cities is not a technological or engineering feat alone. Mm-hmm. We have to understand the forces of nature. We have to understand the natural areas that exist. They are a defense mechanism. We've always separated them from planning our cities. We've looked upon development in isolation of the need for expansion of natural areas, their conservation, their protection. So what we really have to understand is an integrated development plan, which I call it build with nature, an understanding to build with nature. We can't check floods unless we protect and take care of our natural areas. We cannot prevent sea level rise unless we check indiscriminate construction in our cities, which is unplanned, which is anarchic. This build more syndrome with a conscious effort at challenging the forces of nature is really causing this disaster. And flood is just one manifestation. Frequent cyclones is yet another manifestation. The sea level rise is another manifestation. Now, these are forces that historically we've tried to overcome them through our engineering feat, through expression of our power, political power, economic power, and so on and so forth. Time has come to say that we cannot overcome those forces. Let me
stop you, PK, Mr. Das, there, because I just want to, you know, I just want to press the pause button only for one reason, because the government of India, the Narendra Modi government, said that they were going to look at this problem of urbanization, and one of their agendas was building 100 smart cities. This was an election promise, and after coming to power, the Modi government formally launched that smart cities mission in June 2015. The question is, over these 5 years, have India's so-called smart cities really become smart? Take a look.
Smart cities, an idea, grand announcements, and a grand vision. The Smart Cities mission was launched as a competition in June 2015, where state governments were asked to nominate cities to take part. Based on analysis, 100 cities were chosen to receive funding to implement their plans in a project-based manner. The selected cities had proposed a total of 5,151 projects at an estimated cost of 2.05 lakh crore rupees. The Government of India, while pondering on the subject of smart cities, gave certain core infrastructural requirements that would lay the foundations for any smart city. According to the government, a smart city should ideally have adequate water supply, 24/7 electricity, proper sanitation system, a solid waste management system, innovative solutions to urban mobility, affordable housing, excellent IT connectivity, good governance with a particular emphasis on citizen participation, especially e-governance, sustainable environment, health and education. The central government allocated 48,000 crore rupees to the mission over 5 years. It amounted to an average 96 crore rupees per city per year, enough perhaps only to construct a sewage drain in many cities. States and urban local bodies were to contribute an equal amount, another 96 crore rupees. The rest of the required funding was to be generated by the city administration through a host of sources, public-private partnerships, loans and resource monetization.
So what has happened to the smart city project when it comes to flood management? Anand Maniganti, what has happened to the whole notion of smart cities then when it comes to flood management?
I think the answer actually is that it's pretty much nothing. And there are a number of reasons for that. I don't think that we really need to go into all of those details. First of all, the amount of money that is dedicated to a given city for a year is just too small for dealing with any real problems at all. It's too small. But the second issue really has always been that smart cities are very, very IT-oriented, technology-driven conceptions. And I don't really feel that in problems like floods, getting an early warning app that's going to tell me when the water is at my knee level, that it's going to reach my waist level in 10 minutes is going to be particularly useful. And I think that it's that reorientation which has been badly missing in most of the ways in which we have dealt with the flooding problem in our smart cities. So yeah, it's a disappointment.
So you're saying technology on its own cannot resolve these problems. Mahesh Zagde, is part of the problem that the administration itself has not been able to quite, as you said earlier also, be prepared for the changing urban skyline and perhaps, as PK Das suggested, to integrate it with nature. Can any secretary, for example, at the local level or commissioner resist the pressure from politicians for more and more contracts to be given to builders in cities like Pune? The general feeling is the real estate lobby runs a city like Pune today. Can a smart city project chief really resist what the real estate lobby wants?
See, Rajdeep, it's a legacy problem. It is not the problem that could be solved just by a smart city mission. And because smart city mission has too many components attached to it, and one component which is got very huge problem like this flood management cannot be tackled through this particular mission. It has to be a larger issue. Now, see, it is not the issue about whose failure. It is definitely failure of administration. See, the natural water courses that are there, which are recorded in the record of right from the British period, natural water courses are to be respected and they are to be integrated into the development plans, which were not done by the administration. And when they were done, they were...
No, but you need to involve surely local community. This can't... The problem with the smart city project, I presume it's a top-down project. It can't... How Pune's floods have to be managed cannot be decided in Delhi. It has to be decided by involving local communities.
Exactly, Rajdeep. That is the issue, because after the 74th amendment, every city has got its own issues. Every city, let's say for Pune, there were runoff coefficient, that is water that is coming from rain, 74% water just goes off. Nothing is absorbed. So this is the story of most of the cities. So they have to create some kind of environment there that most of the water gets absorbed.
You know,
Secondly,
that is the, when I look at the numbers, PK Das, 56% of smart cities are prone to floods. And we have seen since 2000, India facing 215 flooding events, floods and cyclones. So you've got climate change on the one side, you've got untrammeled urbanization, construction taking place on the other, and no involvement of local communities. Is the solution to involve local communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are 2 points here, Rajdeep, which are important. Again, the smart cities are bitten and driven by, it's a project-oriented program. I think what we have to really start smart cities program with, or for that matter, planning and development of any city, would be a series of demolition plans, undoing everything that we did that challenged and destroyed and damaged natural areas that is today causing this havoc. So I think it has to start with also undoing many things that we did which were wrong, and then integrate them with the planning, in the planning process.
Now, how do you undo it? If in Mumbai, how do you undo it, PK Das? If in Mumbai, for example, on the mangrove land, you've got people giving contracts to developers, how do you undo it? Is it too late?
You undo that precisely through active citizens' participation and activism and people's struggles in every local area, which we have experienced in many parts of India, including in Mumbai, to put pressures on our government to do that. I'll give you a simple example, which also Mr. Mahesh talked about. Mumbai, for example, has 300 kilometers of natural water courses, which we now call them as the nallas of Mumbai. We've turned them into being drains, but these are the natural water courses of the estuary of Mumbai. Now, they have to be revived. We built concrete walls on either side. We've severed the ecological relationship between land and water, for example.
So I have 30 seconds. I have only 30 seconds. How do you change that? If the damage is, or has the damage already been done, is my question. Is it too late?
You can break down those walls. You can restore nature. You can revive nature to rebuild, to regenerate our ecology, which is integral to the idea of development.
We've seen some of that, of course, in Bengaluru with the lakes. The restoration of lakes has been a relatively successful project involving citizens. Maybe we need much more of that, whether it's in Hyderabad, whether it's in Pune, whether it's in any city. I appreciate all of you joining us. I wish we had more time. Maybe we'll carry forward this debate and look more closely at just how these smart city projects are actually working on the ground. Where is your and my money going as taxpayers? I keep asking that question. This was News Without the Noise, the News Unlocked. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.